You've been tricked, not by anyone outside you, by something inside. Every morning it wakes up before you do. It decides how high you'll reach, how loudly you'll speak, how much of yourself you'll allow the world to see. It hides in your thoughts, dressed as logic, dressed as caution, dressed as truth. You don't notice it because it speaks in your own voice. It says, be realistic. It says, you tried once, remember what happened? It says, you're fine the way you are. But you're not fine. You're unfinished. Somewhere inside you, there's a version of yourself pounding on the walls, begging for release. And the walls don't even exist. That's the secret no one ever told you. Most prisons were never built of stone. They were built of stories. Stories that began in childhood, repeated through failure, reinforced by fear. Stories so old, you stopped calling them stories. You started calling them who I am. But tonight, the story changes. Because once you see the bars, you can't pretend they're not there. And once you realize they're made of words, you can start rewriting every sentence that ever told you to stay small. Stay right here. Don't look away. The next few minutes will show you exactly where those beliefs were born and what happens when you finally decide to break them. Limiting beliefs rarely arrive loudly. They slip in quietly, a whisper that becomes a habit. When you were a child, your mind was wide open. You absorbed the world without judgment. Every word, every reaction, every expression from those around you shaped the way you understood yourself. Maybe someone told you to be realistic. Maybe they laughed when you tried. Maybe failure felt so heavy that your body still flinches at the thought of trying again. One moment of shame can become a lifetime of self-protection. The mind writes an invisible law: don't risk being hurt again. And that law, if never questioned, turns into identity. Think about that. How many decisions in your life were made by the part of you that was simply trying to stay safe? How many times have you said, I just don't have what it takes, when what you really meant was, I'm scared to feel that pain again? You were not born limited. You were trained to be careful, trained to be small so others could stay comfortable. But everything that was learned can be unlearned. Take a slow breath. Picture that belief as a handwritten sentence on a fogged-up mirror. Now imagine wiping the glass clean. The sentence fades. You can still see the outline, but it's losing shape. That's what awareness does. It clears the fog. Ask yourself, whose words am I still repeating? Who defined my ceiling? The moment you trace a belief back to its source, you realize it was never yours to carry. And if it was never yours, you can put it down. Keep listening, because the next question will touch the roots of every doubt you've ever felt. You're about to see what really feeds those beliefs. Think about it. How many choices in your life were made by the version of you that only wanted to stay safe? You wanted love, not disappointment. You wanted certainty, not chaos. And yet, the same instinct that once protected you now holds the door closed. The mind repeats, don't risk it again. The body agrees, yes, let's not feel that pain twice. Together, they build a comfortable cage, one so familiar you call it personality. But safety and growth cannot share the same room. Every time you say, That's just who I am. Notice the invisible question behind it. Or is it who I became to survive? The moment you start asking that, cracks appear in the wall. You begin to sense there's more, something beyond the story you've been rehearsing for years. And once you sense it, you can't unknow it. You start seeing the patterns everywhere, the same hesitation, the same apology before speaking truth, the same dreams postponed for now. Every pattern whispers the same sentence. You don't have to do this, but you can't stop here either. That's the point where change begins, right between recognition and action. But recognition alone isn't enough, because once you see the prison, the next question hits harder. What will you do with the key? You were not born limited. You were taught to be careful. You were trained to dim your light so others wouldn't feel small beside you. And the world rewarded your shrinking with the word humble. But humility isn't the absence of power. It's power under control. You can honor others without abandoning yourself. Everything that was learned can be unlearned. Take a breath. Picture that old belief as handwriting on a fogged-up mirror. Now, wipe it slowly. The letters fade, and behind the glass you catch a glimpse of something truer. You, without the edits. Ask yourself softly, whose words am I still repeating? Because the moment you trace a belief back to its origin, you weaken its hold. And if it was never yours, you can finally put it down. But before you do, pause here, because the next part of this journey will touch the roots of fear itself, the power that kept those words alive all these years. And once you see what feeds the belief, you'll know how to starve it. You've seen where beliefs are born, in the quiet corners of childhood, in the voices that taught you to shrink. But as the mirror clears, something else begins to stir. A pulse beneath every hesitation, a shadow behind every "I can't." It moves when you dream too big. It whispers when you reach too far. It's been there all along, protecting you and imprisoning you. You've met the cage. Now it's time to meet the guard, because the next part of this journey will uncover the force that stands between your potential and your action. The one that says, stop, even when everything in you wants to move. And when you finally see what that force really is, you'll never hear it the same way again. Fear is loyal. It's the oldest friend the human race ever had. It stayed awake while your ancestors slept, kept them from the cliff edge, warned them of fire and predators. But somewhere along the way, the world grew safer, and fear didn't know how to retire. Now it guards doorways that lead to growth. Every time you approach a new opportunity, it steps forward and whispers, "Don't." And because the voice sounds familiar, you obey. You call it intuition. You call it wisdom. Sometimes you even call it humility. But it isn't any of those things. It's memory, a reflex born from moments when risk once meant pain. Notice what happens when you dream of something larger. Your heart beats faster, palms warm, thoughts scatter. You call it anxiety. Your body calls it readiness. Fear doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it's just your soul accelerating before takeoff. Hold that thought, because the next few lines might change how you hear fear forever. Fear rarely says its name. It arrives wearing costumes: perfectionism, procrastination, overthinking, control. You think you're being careful, but you're really negotiating with a ghost. You tell yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready." But readiness never visits those who wait for it. It's built by those who move despite the shaking. Think of the last time you avoided something meaningful. Maybe a conversation, a project, a decision. Beneath every reason you gave, there was the same root: what if I fail? But what if you don't? What if the real failure is never knowing? Each time you let fear win, the cage grows thicker, but so does the hunger to be free. And hunger, when ignored long enough, becomes pain, the kind that no comfort can quiet. That's how the brave are born, not through confidence, but through exhaustion with their own excuses. When you reach that point, the voice of fear loses volume. You stop needing it to be silent. You start walking with it and realize it follows. It doesn't lead. You're close to understanding doubt now. Don't step away. The next truth connects the final dots. If fear shouts, doubt whispers. It rarely stops you outright. It simply slows you down until opportunity passes by. Doubt pretends to be logic. It says, wait until the timing is right. Be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. But the right time is never found. It's made. And realistic is usually just a polite word for scared. Doubt doesn't attack your abilities. It attacks your identity. It convinces you that confidence is a prerequisite, when in truth, it's a result. No one wakes up fearless. They act afraid, stumble forward, learn. And somewhere in that repetition, courage appears. You don't eliminate doubt. You outgrow it. And every time you act while uncertain, it shrinks a little more. Remember this: hesitation has a cost. The longer you wait, the louder doubt becomes, and the smaller your world feels. But here's the twist: doubt and fear can't survive where curiosity lives. Because curiosity asks, what if I try? And that single question can burn down the entire prison. Still, there's one more belief left, the most seductive one of all. It doesn't sound like fear or logic. It sounds like truth. It's the whisper that follows you everywhere, even into your victories. You've said it before. You might even believe it now. It says, I am not enough. Keep listening, because the bridge to the next chapter will reveal how that single sentence has shaped your entire life. You've faced fear. You've argued with doubt. But the voice that waits ahead doesn't shout or reason. It agrees with you. It nods when you fail. It smiles when you hesitate. And it says, see, I told you so. This voice doesn't live outside you. It is you. Or at least the version you've mistaken for yourself. It's patient. It collects proof. And every time you succeed, it moves the finish line a little farther, so you never truly arrive. That voice has a name. It's the myth of not enough. The next chapter pulls that myth into the light. And once you hear what it's been whispering all these years, you'll never measure yourself the same way again. Fear argues, doubt debates, but the voice of not enough agrees. It nods when you fail. It sighs when you pause. It tells you you did your best, while quietly adding, but your best still wasn't much. It's polite, it's patient, it's convincing. This voice doesn't want you destroyed, it wants you contained. Because contained people are predictable, and predictable people never threaten the limits they've accepted. Think about it. How many times have you achieved something you once thought impossible, only to feel empty hours later? That's the whisper at work. It moves the goal every time you reach it, so you keep running in circles, exhausted and unsatisfied. You tell yourself you're chasing excellence, but you're actually running from silence, because in silence, the lie becomes clear. And if you stopped long enough to listen, you hear it say the same line it's been rehearsing since childhood. You'll be enough. When? When you earn more. When you look better. When someone finally chooses you, but when never arrives. Because the moment it does, the voice rewrites the contract. You've been paying rent for a home that was already yours. Stay with that thought, because what happens when you stop paying that rent will change everything. No one is born believing they are not enough. A child doesn't look at the sky and think, too big. They reach for it instinctively. So where does the fracture begin? It begins the first time love feels conditional. The first time approval is earned instead of given. The first time effort meets comparison and loses. We start performing for belonging. We learn to read the room instead of our own hearts. And slowly, the question, who am I, turns into who do they want me to be? From there, every relationship becomes a mirror, searching for validation, until you forget what your face looked like before the mirrors. But here's the hidden cost. When you outsource your worth, you hand over the power to decide when you've arrived. And no one, no parent, partner, or platform can ever give you what you won't give yourself. That's why external success often feels hollow. It's applause echoing through an empty room. So ask yourself, if no one could see what you're building, would you still build it? If no one ever clapped, would you still dance? Because if the answer is yes, you've already escaped the myth. But if the answer hesitates, that hesitation is your starting point. The next pages will show you how to rebuild from there. But first, you need to see how this myth keeps itself alive. The myth of not enough is self-sustaining. It feeds on your wins and your wounds alike. When you fail, it says, see? Proof. When you succeed, it whispers, don't get comfortable. And because you argue with it, you give it energy. Every defense becomes acknowledgement. Every doubt becomes evidence. So the first step isn't to fight it, it's to starve it. Starving the myth means silence. It means pausing long enough to notice that the voice only speaks when you stop believing in yourself. When you feel it rising again, don't respond. Just breathe and say to yourself, this thought does not belong to me. Over time, it weakens because it cannot survive without your participation. But something beautiful happens next. The moment the noise fades, you hear another voice. It's quiet, almost unfamiliar. It says, you're doing better than you think. It says, look how far you've already come. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. You are not becoming enough. You're remembering that you always were. Hold that realization, because the next chapter will turn this inner knowing into daily proof that your mind can't argue with. You've exposed the lie. You've looked the voice of not enough in the eye and felt it start to crumble. But the mind has one last trick. It doesn't need the old lie if it can replace it with silence. It lets you believe you're healed, yet it leaves a vacuum where new strength should grow. That's why the next part of this journey is not about awareness anymore. It's about evidence. Because belief fades without proof. You're about to learn how to build a kind of proof that even your doubt can't deny. Evidence strong enough to rewire every thought that once kept you small. The next chapter will show you how to do it, step by step, and how to make your own mind bow to the truth you're becoming. Every mind is a system, not chaos, not mystery. A living, breathing, operating code built from every word, every moment, every conclusion you ever made about yourself. You've seen pieces of that code before, the fears, the doubts, the echoes of other people's voices. But what most people never realize is this: the code doesn't stop running just because you understand it. Awareness alone is like seeing the bars of a cage. Reprogramming is learning how to melt them. Think of your thoughts as commands. Each repetition is a line of code typed into the nervous system. Every "I can't," "I should," and "I always" is another instruction, and your brain, loyal as ever, simply obeys. It doesn't ask, "Is this true?" It only asks, "How do I make this true?" That's why your mind keeps recreating the same stories. It's following orders you forgot you gave. But here's the beautiful thing about any system. It can be rewritten. You don't need to destroy the old program. You just start feeding it new commands until the old ones fade from lack of use. You've done this before without noticing. Every time you learned a new skill, your neurons rewired themselves. Your brain isn't a fortress, it's a garden, and every thought is a seed. So, what are you planting? Hold that question, because before we start coding new commands, you need to understand what keeps the old ones alive. The old code survives on repetition and emotion. Each time you react with the same fear or guilt, you reinforce the circuit. That's why habits feel like gravity. You're not weak. You're simply following an electrical path that's been paved smooth by use. To change it, you must interrupt it. Interruptions are tiny rebellions, turning off the self-criticism mid-sentence, saying, "Maybe I can," when the mind says I can't. Choosing a pause instead of a reaction. Each interruption is a glitch in the old software, and every glitch is a chance for the new code to load. But the mind resists silence. It prefers noise it already understands. So the moment you pause, the old voices panic. "This feels strange. Go back. Don't stay in that discomfort a little longer." That awkward, empty space is the sound of old wiring burning out. And on the other side of that silence, something new begins to hum. It's faint at first. A sentence, a thought, a possibility you haven't believed in years. That's the beginning of reprogramming. the courage to keep listening when the old voices scream. Keep this idea with you because the next part will show you how to give that new signal power, how to turn fragile thoughts into unshakable truth. To overwrite the old code, you don't argue with it, you replace it. The mind believes what it sees and repeats, so feed it proof. Start small. Each morning, before the day floods in, speak one sentence that feels slightly stronger than what you believe. Not, "I am unstoppable." That's too far from your current code. The system rejects it. Try, "I am learning to trust myself." Every time you act in alignment with that sentence, your brain records a new pattern. Within weeks, neurons that once fired for fear start wiring for faith. This is not magic. It's biology, and biology bows to consistency. Write your new commands everywhere, on paper, in conversation, in thought. Speak them in the present tense as if they've already begun, because to the brain, repetition is reality. But there's one more secret to embedding new code: emotion. The stronger the feeling tied to the thought, the faster it installs. That's why gratitude, love, and purpose rewire faster than logic ever could. You can talk yourself into a new life, but only if you feel the words while you speak them. Hold that idea, because what comes next will take this practice off the page and into your reflection, where you'll face the only person who can confirm the rewrite. You've begun to rewrite the code. You've felt the silence where the old commands once shouted. But knowing the new language isn't enough. You must convince the messenger. Every day, that messenger stares back at you from the mirror, waiting to hear what story you'll tell next. The next chapter isn't about thought anymore. It's about confrontation, eye to eye, truth to truth. Because when you can look into your own reflection and speak the new code aloud without flinching, that's when the program becomes permanent. Get ready. The mirror is waiting. For most of your life, you've looked into a mirror to check appearance, not truth. You fix the surface, hair, clothes, angles, and move on, leaving the person behind the glass waiting to be seen. But when the world quiets, that reflection waits. It watches how you talk about yourself when no one's around. It hears every insult you whisper in frustration. It remembers the promises you've broken to yourself. That reflection isn't just an image, it's evidence. Every time you look away too quickly, you confirm to your subconscious that you're not worth meeting. So today, stop avoiding. Stand there long enough to feel the discomfort, that tightening in your chest. That's truth knocking. You're not meeting the person you wish you were. You're meeting the one who's carried you through everything, and they're tired of being ignored. Don't move yet, because in a moment, you're going to say something that could change how you see yourself forever. Look into your own eyes, not at the details, not the lines, not the tiredness, but into the person behind them. Now speak to them, quietly at first. Say, "I forgive you." You'll feel resistance, as if the words hit a wall and bounce back. Say them again, not for perfection, for permission. Then add, you did the best you could with what you knew. Watch what happens in your expression when you say that. The muscles loosen, the breath steadies. That's not vanity, that's self-recognition. Next, introduce your new command, the one you built in the last chapter. Maybe it's, I am learning to trust myself. Maybe it's, I am ready for peace. Say it like you mean it, because your nervous system believes tone more than language. Each repetition is a handshake between your conscious mind and your reflection, a contract of truth. But don't stop here. The ritual isn't complete. There's one final step that transforms words into trust. It begins when you walk away from the mirror and start keeping the smallest promise you make. Trust isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the quiet moments no one sees. When you say you'll wake up early, and you do. When you promise to rest, and actually rest. When you speak kindly about yourself, even when it's easier not to. Each kept promise is a deposit in the bank of self-trust. Each broken one is a withdrawal. And the balance shows in your confidence. That's why the mirror work isn't vanity, it's accounting. Every morning you face yourself, you're checking the balance between who you say you are and what you do next. When the two match, peace appears. Not excitement, not euphoria, peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need approval because it's built on evidence. And once you've built that evidence, no one can take it from you. You'll walk differently. You'll speak differently. You'll stop chasing validation because your reflection already believes you. Hold on to that image, because what comes next will take this self-trust and test it in motion. You've rebuilt the mirror. Now we see how it holds up in the world. You've met your reflection and spoken truth into it. You've begun earning your own trust. But the world won't always mirror that peace back to you. It will test it through noise, temptation, exhaustion, and distraction. And when it does, energy becomes your compass. The next chapter dives into that force. How your body, your habits, your sleep, your movement all feed or drain the mindset you work so hard to build. Because belief without energy collapses under weight. Get ready to discover how to protect your energy, harness it, and turn it into momentum that carries your new identity into every part of your life. The next part isn't about mirrors, it's about motion. Your mindset is powerful, but it runs on fuel. Without energy, belief collapses into wishful thinking. Without rest, optimism becomes noise. The world keeps telling you to think positive, but it forgets the body that carries those thoughts. A tired mind cannot dream clearly. A restless body cannot hold peace. Your energy is the foundation beneath every decision, every emotion, every spark of motivation. When it's high, the smallest goal feels possible. When it's low, even breathing feels like work. So ask yourself, how much of what you call failure was actually just fatigue? How many dreams did you bury under the weight of exhaustion, mistaking depletion for doubt? Energy doesn't disappear. It gets stolen by overthinking, by resentment, by giving more than you recharge. But the thief can be caught. The first step is noticing the leak. Where does your energy go the moment you wake? Do you open your eyes and feed your mind gratitude or chaos? Because the tone of your morning is the rhythm of your day. Every sunrise gives you a choice, fuel or drain. Choose carefully, because what you feed grows. Hold that awareness, because soon you'll learn how to build an energy system that never runs dry. Energy lives in 3 fires: body, mind, and soul. Ignore one and the others dim. The body's fire is movement and nourishment. You don't have to be perfect, just present. Walk, stretch, breathe deeper than your stress allows. Eat foods that make you feel alive, not just full. Drink water before opinions. The mind's fire is focus. Every scroll, every comparison, every piece of noise is a hand reaching into your pocket, stealing minutes of clarity. You think you're relaxing, but you're being drained. Guard your attention like treasure it is. And the soul's fire? That's meaning. You can sleep 8 hours and still wake tired if you live without it. Purpose is oxygen for the heart. Find something, anything, that makes you forget to check the clock. That's where renewal hides. Keep all 3 fires lit, and they feed each other endlessly. Let one fade, and the others flicker. But there's a secret most people never hear. Energy isn't just physical or emotional, it's contagious. Your environment, your conversations, even your posture, all of them broadcast signals that either give or take power. So the next time you feel drained, before blaming the day, look around. Who or what is dimming your flame? Because the answer to that question determines how fast you move toward everything else. And we're about to test that truth. Energy without direction scatters. Momentum is energy with purpose. It begins small, the 10-minute walk, the first glass of water, the 2 pages read instead of the endless scroll. Momentum doesn't ask for leaps, it asks for rhythm. Consistency is its heartbeat. The brain learns patterns through movement, not motivation. When you repeat small actions daily, you train your mind to associate discipline with safety. Suddenly, the hard things stop feeling hard. They just feel normal. That's when change becomes permanent. Momentum is how belief becomes evidence. Every time you act while tired but willing, you prove to yourself that strength lives deeper than comfort. And once you taste that strength, you'll start protecting it like sacred ground. But there's a trap waiting at the next level. When energy and momentum collide, pride can slip in quietly. You start mistaking motion for progress, busyness for growth. That's why the next lesson matters. Because sustaining energy isn't just about acceleration. It's about control, knowing when to move and when to rest. Keep that thought. The next chapter will show you how mastery isn't about doing more, but about directing your power where it matters most. You've awakened the engine. You've learned to feed the fires that keep you alive and driven. But raw energy is wild. Without aim, it burns through everything. Goals, focus, peace. The next chapter teaches you how to shape that fire, how to turn movement into mastery through time, focus, and disciplined stillness. Because energy gives you life, but discipline decides what that life becomes. Get ready. The momentum you built is about to meet direction. You've built energy, you've lit your fires, but now the danger shifts because motion isn't progress and being busy isn't the same as moving forward. The world worships speed. Everyone's running, posting, chasing, performing, and yet few can answer a simple question. Where are you going? We've mistaken activity for achievement. We think urgency equals importance. We confuse notifications for purpose. But look closely. Most of what drains your time doesn't deserve it. Time is the one resource you never reclaim. You can rebuild money, reputation, even love, but not time. Every minute you spend on distraction is a piece of your future quietly dissolving. Ask yourself, when was the last time you were fully here, not scrolling, not planning, just alive in the moment you're in? That stillness you avoid isn't boredom, it's clarity. Because the truth is this, the people who master life don't move faster than others. They move with intention. They don't chase everything, they choose something. And that's where discipline begins. Stay close, because in a moment we'll confront the hardest truth about progress. Why it's not lost through failure, but through distraction, disguised as effort. Distraction doesn't shout, it smiles. It offers comfort dressed as productivity. You tell yourself you're researching, preparing, just taking a break. But hours later, the dream you were supposed to build is buried beneath open tabs and empty scrolling. Distraction feeds on emotion. It strikes hardest when you feel uncertain, lonely, or afraid to face the silence. It knows you'd rather do something meaningless than nothing at all. So it offers you noise, endless noise. That's why focus feels painful at first. It forces you to face what's real. But here's the paradox. Silence is the birthplace of power. Every breakthrough in art, science, and life came from someone who sat still long enough to hear a thought no one else could. You don't find discipline by pushing harder. You find it by removing what dulls your edge. Imagine if you treated your attention like oxygen. Would you waste it on smoke? The next time you feel pulled away, pause and ask, is this helping me grow or helping me hide? The honest answer might sting, but that sting is your compass pointing back to purpose. Keep that compass handy, because the next section will show you how to navigate it, how to command time instead of chasing it. Time is not an enemy, it's a mirror. It reflects what you truly value, not what you claim to value. You say you want peace, but your calendar shows chaos. You say you want freedom, but your habits build cages. The clock is honest. It exposes your priorities more clearly than your promises ever could. To master time, you don't need more hours. You need better boundaries. Decide who and what gets your energy before the day begins, not after it's already stolen. Give your mornings to creation, your afternoons to collaboration, and your nights to restoration. Guard the first and last hour of every day like sacred land, because that's where mindset is shaped, in the quiet bookends of your day that no one else sees. But even mastery can become a trap if it turns into perfectionism. Discipline isn't about control, it's about rhythm. It's knowing when to push and when to pause. The disciplined mind doesn't say, I must do everything. It says, I must do what matters. And that's the secret most people miss. Consistency isn't built by endless motion. It's built by alignment. When what you do matches who you want to become, time expands instead of disappears. And once you feel that expansion, you realize something profound. Progress has never been about speed. It's about direction. Hold that realization, because the next chapter will take everything you've learned, the mindset, the energy, the discipline, and test it against the hardest teacher of all, pain. You've organized your world. You've commanded time and learned to move with intention. But life doesn't always obey your schedule. It interrupts. It breaks what you built. It asks questions you thought you'd never have to answer again. And that's when pain walks in, not as punishment, but as the final instructor. The next chapter isn't about control, it's about surrender. About what pain does when it's not avoided, but faced, because some lessons only arrive wrapped in loss. And those lessons, if you let them, will rebuild you stronger than belief ever could. Get ready. The storm is coming, but it's not here to destroy you. It's here to reveal you. Pain is the teacher no one invites, but everyone meets. It arrives unannounced, carrying lessons too heavy to hand over gently. You don't read its message, you feel it, through loss, through betrayal, through nights when the mind won't quiet down. You tell yourself you're breaking, but what's really happening is revealing, because pain doesn't destroy the real you. It destroys what was never real to begin with. Every illusion that said, I need them to be whole. Every belief that whispered, I can't live without this. Pain removes the false furniture of your life until all that's left is the floor. Steady, raw, honest. And on that floor, you meet yourself again. That's why healing always starts with collapse. The fall is the doorway. The breaking is the beginning. You're not being punished, you're being uncovered. Hold on to that thought, because what comes next will change how you see every wound you've ever carried. Pain isn't chaos, it's construction. When something fractures inside you, it doesn't end your story. It exposes the foundation underneath. Every emotion, grief, anger, regret, has a blueprint. Grief shows you what you value. Anger shows you where your boundaries were crossed. Regret shows you where alignment was lost. If you follow those signals instead of fighting them, pain becomes a compass. But most people never read the map. They just run from it. They patch the cracks without checking what caused the collapse. And so the same storms return, each louder than the last, until the lesson is finally learned. Here's the truth. Healing isn't about feeling better. It's about seeing clearer. And clarity can hurt. That's why pain is both the knife and the sculptor. It cuts, but it also shapes. When you can look at your wound and say, This didn't happen to me, it happened for me. You don't erase the past, you extract its wisdom. And that wisdom, once integrated, becomes strength that can't be taught by comfort. You're almost there, because the next part shows how to transform that strength into light for others. Healing isn't the end of pain. It's the moment pain becomes purpose. The scars remain, but they stop aching. They start glowing. They remind you where you've been and who you refuse to stop becoming. You begin to notice it in small ways. Your voice steadies when you speak your story. Your eyes soften when you see someone else suffering. You stop needing to win. You start wanting to help. That's the quiet miracle of healing. It turns survival into service. When you use your wound to guide others out of theirs, the pain completes its purpose. It ends the cycle. The past can't be changed, but it can be redeemed, and redemption is the most powerful fuel for the human spirit. So the next time pain visits, don't run. Ask it, what are you trying to build in me this time? You'll be amazed by the answer. But before we leave this lesson, there's one final truth you must face. The kind that separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. Because transformation is meaningless if you can't forgive. And forgiveness, that's the final unlock. You've survived the storm. You've turned pain into light. But there's still something heavy in your hands. Something you said you'd never release. Forgiveness. Not the shallow kind you give to end a conversation. The real kind, the one that empties pride, dissolves anger, and frees your heart from its own chains. The next chapter isn't about others. It's about you. Because carrying resentment doesn't punish the past. It poisons the present. And when you learn to forgive, you don't lose power. You reclaim it. Get ready. You're about to experience what freedom actually feels like. Some burdens make noise, others sit quietly in the chest for years. Forgiveness is not about the one who hurt you. It's about setting down the weight that's been shaping your posture ever since. Anger feels powerful, but it's a fire that only burns its container. You think you're holding someone accountable, but you're only holding yourself hostage. Every replayed memory, every imaginary argument, every clenched jaw is a rope tying you to what you want to leave behind. The truth is brutal. You can't walk toward peace while dragging yesterday by the throat. So ask yourself, what would be left of you if you finally let go? Because forgiveness isn't weakness. It's surrendering the illusion that the past can be rewritten. Hold that thought, because the next lines will reveal the cost of carrying pain too long and the miracle that happens when you finally drop it. Resentment feels safe because it gives pain a reason to stay. It says, I can't move on until they see what they did. But waiting for apology is waiting for permission. And permission is a door that rarely opens. So you sit in a prison of your own making. Doors unlocked, chains self-forged. Here's the paradox. Forgiveness doesn't excuse, it releases. It doesn't say what you did is fine. It says what you did will not define me anymore. That shift, one silent decision, changes your chemistry. Your body stops producing cortisol. Your breath deepens. You literally lighten. Science calls it parasympathetic recovery. The soul calls it relief. Forgiveness is not something you feel first. It's something you choose until you feel it. And every time you choose again, the wound closes a little more. Stay with me, because in a moment, you'll see how this choice turns from release into rebirth. When the anger fades, silence rushes in. It's strange at first, like missing a noise you got used to. But in that quiet, something sacred happens. Space appears. Space for new joy, new meaning, new love. Forgiveness clears the soil so growth can happen again. You start noticing small things. The sunrise, the laugh of a friend, the way your own breath sounds lighter. You're no longer reacting. You're living. That's emotional freedom. It doesn't erase memory. It erases permission for memory to hurt you. Forgiveness doesn't mean you trust again. It means you trust yourself again. And that's the deepest peace a human can know. Hold that peace, because the next chapter will show you what to do with it. How to build a new life, not from pain, but from power. You've put the weight down. You've learned the difference between peace and numbness. Now what? This is where most people stop, at healing. But healing was never the destination. It was preparation. The final chapter of this journey is rebirth. It's about walking out of the ruins with open hands, not empty ones. You're about to become the author of your next story, the one written in your own voice, guided by your own rhythm, free from every old command. Because once forgiveness sets you free, the only question left is, what will you create with the freedom you've earned? Get ready for the final chapter. A new life is waiting to be written. There's a quiet that comes after long battles. It doesn't sound like victory. It sounds like breath. The air feels different, not because the world changed, but because you did. You no longer rush to fill the silence. You listen to it. That's how you know healing has turned into transformation. You begin to see beauty in things that used to irritate you. You smile without reason. You stopped needing to prove anything. This is the part few ever reach, the moment when peace stops feeling fragile and starts feeling normal. Because the storm was never meant to drown you. It was meant to wash you clean. Now you stand in still water, seeing your reflection not as broken, but as reborn. The person staring back isn't who you were before the storm. It's the one you were always meant to become. Hold that reflection, because soon it will start walking. Your life is a story, and for the first time, your hands are on the pen. The old chapters remain, but they no longer define the plot. They're just context for your evolution. Every healed wound becomes a paragraph of wisdom. Every failure becomes foreshadowing for triumph. Every goodbye makes space for the next hello. You've learned that mastery isn't about perfection, it's about authorship. You decide what each moment means. You choose which thoughts get written, which fears get deleted. The blank page ahead is not empty, it's sacred. It's the proof that you survived, that you've earned a right to begin again. So start small. Write new habits, write new rituals, write kindness into your mornings and gratitude into your nights. Because the story you live today becomes someone else's survival manual tomorrow. Your evolution is someone else's permission to believe. And that's how transformation ripples through the world. But before we close, there's one final truth to write. One line that will echo beyond this chapter. Every story begins with a single sentence. Here's yours. I am no longer the person who doubts my own becoming. Say it softly. Then again, louder. That sentence is your declaration of authorship. It marks the end of every borrowed identity and the beginning of your own. From here on, you're not trying to heal. You're living healed. Not trying to prove. You're simply being. You'll still fall sometimes, still question, still ache. But now you'll know what the pain means. You'll know how to stand again without fear of breaking. Because you've done it before. And each time you rise, the cracks glow brighter, a golden map of everything you've overcome. This is who you are now, the storm-tested, light-carrying, endlessly becoming version of you. The story doesn't end here. It unfolds. And every page that follows will begin with the same quiet truth. You were always enough. You've rewritten your mind. You've released your past. You've become the author of your own becoming. But mastery doesn't stop itself. It expands outward. The next part of this journey moves beyond the inner world into creation itself. How to build, lead, and live from your higher consciousness. Because once you've mastered your mindset, the question changes from who am I to what can I build with who I've become. So take a breath. Close this chapter with pride. And when you're ready, open the next one. The world is waiting for the story only you can write. You made it. All the way through the storms, the mirrors, the rewiring, the release. If you're still here, it means something inside you refused to quit. A part of you that knew there was more waiting on the other side of limitation. That's not coincidence. That's calling. Right now, you stand at a rare moment in your life, the moment between awareness and creation. You've seen what holds you back. Now you get to build what pulls you forward. But don't do it alone. Stay connected to the energy that got you here. If this journey spoke to you, if something shifted inside you, make this your quiet promise. Subscribe, stay, grow with the next chapters. Because this isn't just content. It's a mirror for every part of you still becoming. And every week, we go deeper, wiser, higher. The next part of your evolution starts soon. And when it arrives, you'll want to be ready. So take a breath. Hit subscribe. And remember, You were never broken. You were being built. The story continues, and you're in it now.